Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion, and as you can tell from the title, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond. A little bit over the halfway mark of the season now, and this is episode 16 of season 5, Ray's Journal. Tale of play by Jennifer Crittenden. I'm looking at it because I put an H instead of a J, stupid me. That'd be more like the Italian version of it if you go by how Jeffrey is in Italian. And this, as I said at the end of the previous episode, is the one that got some Emmy love for this season. I'll get to that in a little bit. Now, before I get too far into it, just a reminder that if you want to support the channel, both the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. If you want to show continuous support, go the Patreon route. You'll gain access to videos like this early. You'll also be able to suggest topics for future videos, whether it's reviews, commentaries, or if you want to give me a random topic like VHS rental memories, hint hint. And if you just want to do one-off support or a one-off request, go the PayPal route. Either way, your continued support of this channel will be appreciated. Ray's Journal. This is the episode that Ray was nominated for lead actor in a comedy series for this year. In case anyone's wondering, he lost to Michael J. Fox for the episode of Spin City Goodbye, which, without having watched that, I'm guessing that's the episode he left the show on. I could see why then, because Fox is a good actor, so with that one, I could see him leaving the show with that one, but I don't know much about Spin City, so that's just me speculating from loose memory. And this is also one of the two episodes that Roberts won her supporting actress Emmy for. It was this and The Sneeze. Of the two, I'll say she gives a better performance than this one, but I'll talk about that once we get to it. Now, Ray's Journal. I have a syndication thing to mention about this one because I did see this episode in syndication. And it always struck me as weird how the episode would begin in syndication, because it would begin following where the title credits are supposed to go. And we enter it in mid-conversation where Ray's like, "Do you think my mom really read my journal?" It always struck me as an odd beginning, like, wait, what journal? And then when I got the DVD for season 5 and started watching the episodes, I got to this one, I'm like, I don't remember this. I'm like, oh yeah. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Which, hold that thought. A couple more episodes time, we're going to get to another episode where I had that same issue, and it's for the same exact reason. I'll say, though, that one at least flows better because, well, I'm skipping ahead now, but that one you could at least think and put together like, oh, off camera. Whereas this one, while off camera works, it's still a little weird. Now, the episode begins with the kids playing, Allie dragging one of the twins. Marie comes in running, "Stop doing that!" And getting on Ray and Deborah like, "Really, you're going to let them? They shouldn't be dragging. They're just having fun." And then Marie, being her typical self, makes a crack. "Oh yes, we're feminists." Which I couldn't help but look at the TV when she said that, watching it back. I'm like, really, Marie? Well, I mean, I've mentioned in a couple of reviews, you could definitely tell that the Barones are like slightly conservative. They're more on the conservative side than the liberal side when it comes to their political views and how they view the family dynamics and all that. Whereas Deborah is definitely more on the liberal side. But in this regard, it's like, really, Marie? I believe, based on how you talk, that you believe the genders are equal. So technically that would make you a traditional lowercase f feminist. In case you're wondering, an uppercase feminist is a feminist that goes more the opposite direction, away from equality, and depending on how extreme they get, could be the feminist equivalent of a misogynist. But a little f1 is supposed to be more about true equality amongst the genders. I don't want to get too far into that whole discussion, but it's to explain my whole thing about hating the fact they had her say that. But it fits Marie saying that, but it's still one of those things like, really? Technically, you are a feminist. I mean, even if you want to throw the equalist thing there, it's like that's just changing the title of the word to get to the point where you could say you're not a feminist. But, oh well. She also comes from a generation where people would associate feminism with just loose women and taking off the bra and going like that. So I could see why she would have that negative connotation with that phrase. And now she brings up a reason why they should not be allowing them to do that, and that was that when Ray was younger, he got punched in the eye by a female at school. Of course, Deborah starts teasing him, but The way Ray explains it makes sense why that would happen. I mean, we see Ray average size, height-wise, and he's like lanky. And he got hit in the face by a female, by a girl when they were teens, who was built kind of like me. I mean, he says her nickname's Tank, so on the bigger side. Probably got some good genetics on both sides, so of course, that's going to happen. Basically if you want to imagine it, imagine Ray Romano getting punched in the face by China. That's one way to imagine it, and I can imagine that, and it works. And then Ray's getting freaked out. How'd you find out about that? I never told anybody about it. And then he brings up the fact that when he was younger, he kept a journal, and he wrote it in code. That's the thing that's throwing it. Now, the code he uses, it's simple, easy to remember, but the downside is it's easy to crack. And you see that from the first time Ray brings it up and gives example of the code. Wyoka. You guys get it yet? Wyoka. My Ewif. My Ewif? Still no? Well, as Deborah says, his code is ELAM. If you haven't figured out just from the examples I've given, he would just take the last letter of the word and put it at the beginning. So OK becomes Wyoka. Wife becomes Ewif. It's pretty simple to figure out once you've looked at enough words, especially since he's not doing it with every word. But it is a simple one for a youngin' to come up with, and you do it enough times it could work. Now, Ray decides to go confront his mother with this, and she eventually cracks when he's about to ask Frank the same thing, saying they read the journal. And the fun thing about this is that Frank is not remembering at first, like, what journal? And then as they mention stuff about the journal and that they used to read it after watching Johnny Carson, he finally remembers and mentions that there was some fun stuff in there, other than what we found out, like putting the belt around his head to make his nose smaller. But the funniest thing that they mention about that is that Marie had to read it out loud because Frank couldn't crack the code. That just makes me laugh. That Frank, of all people, couldn't crack this code. It's a simple code to read, but it kind of fits in Frank's character that he wouldn't pay attention to these little minute details in the verbiage to be able to pick out, but okay, that's that. But Marie could. So it's one of the things, I guess you could say, that Ray inherits from Marie, but also it's a little hindered by Frank, and he couldn't make it more complicated. But that's the whole thing with genetics. It's give and take. Now, Ray is understandably mad because it's one of those things like, you had no right to go in there. Now, depending on your parenting style, this is going to determine who you side with in this. You might say that technically, being a concerned parent, she had every right to go into that journal. I, on the other hand, am of the opinion that unless you actually feel that there is a legit reason to, you don't read your child's journal. Like if their behavior just suddenly changed, and I'm not talking about typical changing when you start getting hormonal, whether male or female, and you're going through the beginning stages of puberty. That's to be expected. I'm talking about your behavior just suddenly takes a left turn at Albuquerque and goes straight off into the desert. Like there's a big change. Like I know it's kind of a different, but like the big changes that we all noticed in the household when my younger brother was going through his little issue a decade ago. Those of you who've long-term watched know what I'm talking about. When he was going through that issue, his behavior just suddenly swerved, and everybody noticed it. And I was the one worried most of all, especially since I was taking health class at that time, and I was the one that noticed what the symptoms were. And no one else wanted to believe me until we actually found out more evidence. But something like that, or it's just like a total behavior change, not just like being a little bit more aggressive or whatnot. Unless it's something like that, you shouldn't go through their journal or anything like that. You should just trust your kids. And Marie, she just doesn't seem to understand that. She just seems to think that as a parent, it's her job to always snoop. And of course, Frank being there, he's going to back that up. And it's one of those things of like, really, Marie? There's a thing called respecting your kid's privacy, and apparently that is a foreign concept to you and your generation, at least how you were raised. And of course, she tries to justify it. I just wanted to make sure you were right, that you weren't on drugs. Oh, really? That's laughable, Marie. That's not enough justification, in my view, unless you had real serious belief that they were on drugs, which, as we've seen from some of her behavior throughout the show, not the case. Like when she got a hold of Robert's jacket the one time and sniffed it just to make sure he didn't smoke. But then again, we see in other times that there happened stuff that could justify this paranoia, even though she doesn't find about it till years later, like when we find out that Ray threw that party in her house. So the paranoia, it does have a little justification, but the thing is, she's going about it the wrong way. And as we find on another episode, this behavior gonna probably contribute a little bit to Robert and Ray going, fight the power! Now back on track. Ray does get a little apology from Marie, but it doesn't end there, because as she puts it, you think you're innocent in all this. At that point, first time I was watching the episode, I'm like, I wonder what she means by that. Rewatching it now, I'm like, knowing what's going to happen, watching it just with analysis mode on, it's like, yeah, Marie, he is innocent. You violated his privacy and read the journal. He could have admitted that he was a second gunman on the grassy knoll next to what you read in there, and it wouldn't matter. Those were his private thoughts. You had no right to snoop in there based on what you were saying. And based on the fact that you're getting uppity, it's like, that's your own fault. You know, though there's a phrase, don't go looking for snakes, you just might find them. And she found the snake and it bit her in the ass. After Marie storms out, obviously still upset, Ray tries to figure out what could have been in there. He goes, talks with Robert, and that's when he starts to remember some of the stuff he put in there, and he thinks all that stuff, a lot of it teenage related, must be why she's mad at him, which you kind of see why. I mean, Marie does come across as kind of a prude, even though she tries to argue that she's not. Of course, we find out that Robert also had a journal, but he also had a decoy one, and that's the one she read. And the real one, I'm not going to spoil where he kept it, because that's a fun gag, and those of you who are watching this episode for the first time, I want you to keep that in mind. Now, Ray does go and talk with Marie again, and you can tell she's still upset by the fact she didn't get an apology. Ray does apologize about the stuff in there, but then as we find out from as they're talking, that's not the reason she was upset. And she cites a specific date, and she actually pulls the journal out of her little drawer over there. Those of you who've been watching the episodes with me, or were long-term watchers of the show, remember, that's the same drawer she had her Zucrettes in, and it's the same drawer she put Deborah's letter in. So that's the drawer for everything important to Marie and everything she's never going to forget. So she pulls it out, brings it up, which if you actually pay close attention when they're handling the journal, it's obvious that the journal has no writing in there, so they just got one and didn't even bother putting like fake one that even from a distance you wouldn't be able to notice what it. And it's obvious later, right? He doesn't write anything down, but it's part of the suspension of disbelief when it comes to like the theater rules, which sitcoms with how they're shot, that's like a halfway between film and a halfway between theater rules when it comes to that. So let it slide. I never noticed it. I only noticed it this time because IMDb listed it, and then I was paying close attention for it. If you're paying attention to everything else, it's literally blink and you'll miss it. Well, she brings up the specific date, and what did Ray say? He said he hates his mom. Now, he doesn't remember why, because of how long ago it was, and obviously it was so inconsequential to him that he's like, really? I don't even remember putting that. But for Marie, given how we've seen her temperament is, having her favorite son write that, it's just, I'm calling him the favorite son, based on all the stuff we see, even though she loves Robert, it's pretty obvious Ray is the golden child. He can do no wrong until he says he hates you. That really stung her. And I will say the way that Doris Robert plays this in all the scenes where she's mad at Ray, and even this part of the episode where we find out why, just the emotion in her voice when she says, I.e. hat my mom. From that moment alone, you can see why she won the Best Supporting Actress Emmy, and I have to applaud her performance in this episode. We may really question Marie and judge her on a lot of stuff she does, but there's one thing we cannot deny, and that is that Doris Roberts plays her beautifully. And that's part of the reason why we have those things with Marie. If someone wasn't playing her as well, and we were hating her based solely on the writing and being with the performance, it wouldn't stick with us as well. So the fact that Doris plays it in that Emmy-winning role, excellent. Now, when Deborah comes in, she brings it up, and she actually goes more into detail about that day. Everything was going fine. She finds a journal and then reads it. Now, the thing that I hate about this is that it turns Deborah's entire demeanor around all because Marie had to play on the mother card. Oh, do you have any doubts? I'm like, that's bullshit. There's no reason why that should have changed Deborah's whole perspective on it, to go from shame on you to Marie to join forces with her and going, apologize to your mother. There's no reason they should have done that. I think the only reason they did that was to, show that Deborah does, understand Marie a little bit, just like at times Marie understands Deborah, even if they're not always on the same page. But even so, that's a stupid reason for this episode. She still should have been like, all right, okay. Still doesn't change the fact that you read his journal without his permission. I mean, I understand why you're hurt by it, but you, like I said earlier, you go looking for snakes, you just might find them. And it's only after that part that Marie decides to drop it, but only after getting something in her own Marie way, which I'm not going to spoil for those of you who are watching the episode first time. It's one of those ones that by the end of it, because Marie does end up getting her way, even though it is one of my favorite episodes, I can't help but roll my eyes a little bit. Well, that's how it is with this show. Sometimes Marie gets her way. However, if there's any consolation for those of you who are watching along with me, or being like, once again she wins, there's going to be an episode in the next season where she is going to finally get a little bit of her comeuppance, and Deborah's involved. So stay tuned for that one. Just like next season is when we're going to finally get the rant episode I've been talking about for the last 2 years. Oh, just wait till we get there. One I got to do a little research for before we get to there. Now, not really much else to say about this episode. The script by Crittenden, excellent. The actors pulled off well. Doris really deserved that Emmy Award, just like Ray. I haven't really talked much about his performance in this episode, but it takes two to tango. The scenes that he shares with Roberts at the end, he really carries it, which is why I could see he got nominated for lead actor. Just the way he sells it, like he's genuinely confused, and then when he realizes what it is and he's trying to comfort his mother, you really do feel it, and I have to applaud him for that. He does eventually win an Emmy, but being nominated here, I gotta applaud it for this episode. And as you probably could tell from all the praise I've been giving this episode, this is definitely going on the VHS list, and this is definitely an episode I recommend you watch. If you're going to just show people a couple of episodes, this is another one of those ones to show them. Now, of course, one episode that's also going to be on that will be in the next season 1, but I'm just putting it here. I still don't know if I'm going to put that one first or last as I review the show. By the time that one goes live, you'll probably know. Now, the next episode is one I didn't watch until I hit the DVDs, and it's interesting because they pick a couple lines from that episode to be in the little screen thing in the main menu. And it's partially about imagining a rain so beautiful, I can't believe it existed. Till next time, guys.